Hey, it's time to talk songwriting and music on the podcast tonight. If you know me personally, or you've been following the podcast, or you've seen me play music somewhere, you know that I have a project called Under This Cold Sky. So, grab your towel, get ready to throw some steam. It's time for Saturday Sauna Night. Hi, I'm Steve. Welcome to the Saturday Sauna Night podcast. Tonight, I want to kind of walk back through some of the other creative ventures I've done. And I guess before I get too deep into it, I should preface by saying it kind of seems to me like there's two dangers in doing creative work, either talking about it too much or not talking about it enough. And I think at different times, different points in time, I've kind of fallen into both camps. There's definitely been times where I've spammed people's Facebook pages or news feeds, I should say. Posting, hey, I recorded a song, check it out. And then there's other times where, I've gone months or years at a time without really talking about it. So I guess I want to talk about it because this is my podcast and I can do what I want. But also because I would really hate for this stuff to just become like digital dust on the internet. I heard someone use that phrase to describe I think they were describing music or something, like recordings that had been uploaded but hadn't really been given much attention. Not many people listened to them, that sort of thing. And could talk for hours on how oversaturated indie music is, independent artists. It's so easy to record anything, music, a podcast, instructional videos, any type of social media format you want to do, whether it's, short form, like kind of meme stuff like TikTok, or, long form like a podcast. It's super easy, and so everybody wants to do it. But as I think back on some of the things I've done in the past, and I'm still continuing to work with music too. So I'll start with that. All of this stuff ties back to trying to find creative avenues to, I guess, celebrate the Upper Peninsula. It's such a unique and special place, and those of us who live here know that, understand that, and it's part of life. And of course, there's a lot of people who, have a lot of special memories visiting, and still like to come and explore and see just the variety of, you can go from pseudo mountains to pseudo oceans in the same, within a few miles of each other, especially on the Lake Superior shoreline. So I guess I'll start with that. So my music, I go by Under This Cold Sky. And I knew when I started writing songs, I didn't want to just use my name. I wanted something a little more poetic sounding. And I had listened to and was familiar with some other artists who, were just a solo act, but kind of had a band name. I think about Sleeping at Last was a favorite. Just one guy on piano or guitar. Trying to think of some others. Yeah, well, if I think of some others, I'll let you know. But anyway, I wanted something a little more interesting sounding, and I also wanted something that sort of had a UP feel to it without being overtly, say ya to the UP, eh? And so I went with Under This Cold Sky. And my first, so I actually started writing songs like 10, 11 years ago. And my early stuff, and I still play these sometimes, they're a lot of fun to play, but my early stuff was kind of like emo, acoustic pop punk. That's what I was listening to a lot at the time, to impress a certain girl who later we'd get married, and here we are, 7 years later. Um, so that was a lot of my early music, very much influenced by acts like Mayday Parade, Dashboard Confessional, little pinch of Mumford and Sons thrown in there. They were huge at the time. Sigh No More had just come out. It was kind of the heyday of the stomp clap era, as people jokingly refer to, the Lumineers, Mumford and Sons. But as I went on, I started writing songs kind of all about the UP and UP history and some of the interesting stories and, you know, places there are around here. And these are places that, and stories that I grew up with. I think of, so my very first collection of songs, I made a 7-song album or EP, if you will, called Of Iron and Men. And it's kind of all centered around mostly Marquette County history, especially iron mining. There's a song about ski jumping. I had some great uncles who were heavily involved in that sport. And then, for good measure, there's a song at the end that kind of tells the story of Hemingway's Big Two-Hearted River. So I wanted to kind of create something that took these stories that I grew up, hearing about. There's a song that tells the story of Anatomy of a Murder. Like I said, there's a ski jumping song. There's a song that talks about the Barnes and Hecker mine disaster. There's a song called Old Bill Burt and the Chippewa Chief that's sort of a kind of a campy, like Johnny Cash telling a story while he's singing style thing. Kind of like he does with Shel Silverstein's A Boy Named Sue, where I'm like talking and playing in the verses and then singing the chorus. But I started writing these UP songs and really getting into the history and stories from the area and revisiting these places and people and things. And I wanted to make this album, and I wanted it to have kind of an old-timey sound and to kind of capture, like, a guy in a small-town Upper Peninsula bar in the 1950s picks up a guitar and starts, telling stories on the guitar. That's kind of the feel I was going for. And so I had dabbled with recording my own music before that, and I never really put in the time or effort to figure it out. And so I got lazy and I stopped. And so when I wanted to record this thing, I knew, doing the phone voice memo thing wasn't going to cut it if I actually wanted to, like, make it sound good. And so I started exploring, like, studios around Marquette area, and it's weird. I think there are some, but they're really secretive. And a lot of the ones, if you Google like Marquette, Michigan recording studios, you'll find like random websites from people who owned studios like 10 years ago, who, the website probably doesn't even work anymore. It's bizarre. But the one I found, which I grew up with these guys, was De Upers. So if you're familiar at all with the Ishburn area especially, you've probably been by De Upers tourist trap right on Highway 41. And growing up, especially when I'd have my cousins come up, they'd visit for the summer, and we'd be out at my grandparents' camp, and a bunch of like 10, 12-year-old boys, we were listening to De Upers, and of course everything they did was hilarious. I think I knew all the words to Second Week of Deer Camp. Like, I don't know how old I was, but I think there's also home video footage of me dancing to the Sauna song when I was like 2 or 3, or even younger than that. Old camcorder footage. But anyway, I didn't know that they ran a recording studio, and so I connected with Jim Belmore, who's kind of been one of the primary songwriters and for them for many years, and has his own solo work that's outstanding, and apparently has quite a resume recording other area and regional bands. So I booked some time at his studio, and he was super knowledgeable and professional and helpful. And I kind of did it live, like one take style. I think there are a few we recorded more than once, but I played guitar or mandolin and sang at the same time. And it was kind of surreal, like recording these songs, these UP history songs, in this studio with, the funny thing about the Upers is it was novelty music, or lyrically at least, right? I mean, they were a comedy act primarily, but the music's good. And like, when I hear some of the guitar stuff and things they did, and the accordions and these different instruments, like they were skilled musicians. So that was super cool. So I actually have a couple of the instruments here. So one of the main instruments I used on that is this mandolin. So this sat on top of a piano in my grandparents' house for as long as I've been alive. And it just kind of sat up there propped as a decoration. And as I started learning more about how to play guitar and stuff, I kind of acquired it and took it home and gave it a little TLC. And I haven't played it in a really long time now either. It's been sitting in my basement. But put on some fresh strings, and I kind of tuned it. I'm trying to remember. If you're not, a musician, this wouldn't matter anyway. But I tuned it to this interesting open tuning, and that sounds okay. But I kind of came up with these really interesting, almost like, I don't want to say Celtic sounding, but kind of a interesting sound. And a couple of the songs on that EP use this. So the title track of Iron and Men uses it. It's kind of like almost like a miner's ballad, I guess. The Barnes and Hecker song, it's called Red Earth, Black Sky, that uses this instrument. And so that was a lot of fun to kind of resurrect this thing. We have no idea how old it is. There's no labels or markings of any sort of brand or manufacturer. Somebody said that one of my great uncles was overseas and acquired it somewhere in Europe, like World War II era. So no clue, but that's kind of one of the featured instruments on that project. The other one, again, trying to get this kind of old school country folk sound, I had to use, and if you are a guitar player, you'll be familiar with this one, I had to use my Telecaster. So this was kind of the go-to instrument for most of the songs, or most of the rest of the songs on that album. Old Bill Burt and the Chippewa Chief, again, I kind of did this. Luther Perkins, that was Johnny Cash's guitarist. Kind of a little slapback echo thing. This ain't going to be in tune, but I don't know if you can hear that, but that's sort of the vibe. There's a song called Cornish Town where there's this fun little guitar solo thing at the end where I'm just kind of picking like this really interesting rhythm. That's not in tune at all, but just kind of this bluesy, fun, twangy sound. So that was that. And I didn't bring any of my acoustic guitars here with me, but the other songs on the album use an acoustic guitar, um, and kind of some interesting chords and tunings. So anyway, that's my first album of Iron and Men, and that's 5 years old as of this January, because I did that in January of 2018. So, but that was the first time like I recorded music, especially in someone else's actual studio with real equipment, and printed CDs, and did the whole. So there's different websites you can go through that will kind of host your music on all of the streaming platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Pandora. Put it on sites like Amazon, the Google Play Store, although I don't know if they do that anymore. Even like if you want your music to be available on like Instagram for Reels and TikTok, places like that. So it was the first time I did that, and I did it, and I booked a bunch of just local, little shows, usually playing like at a restaurant or some summer events where they had music, and that was my first foray into recording music and kind of putting it out there for people to hear. So that's of Iron and Men, and I'll drop all these links in the video description too, and hopefully I get around to putting up the cover art too in the video so you can see that. But that was of Iron and Men. That was my baby. That was my first music project that I actually recorded and, like I said, kind of put out into the world. Because everyone like to joke when I play live. I say, my whole first album's about the history of iron mining, because like that's what everybody does for their first album, right? So after that, I still had a bunch of Upper Peninsula themed songs I wanted to record. And so I got together with a friend who has a home studio, and he recorded me, and it was just me and a guitar again, kind of like the first time around. But I used a 12-string guitar a lot. And this second project I called If You Seek a Pleasant Peninsula, taken, of course, from our state motto, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you. And so that's the title track, and the whole thing is kind of just like a love letter to the UP and the Great Lakes. And the title track, If You Seek a Pleasant Peninsula, it goes, long and lonely are the highways that lead here. Late travelers chasing the finite summer days. And then the chorus is like, if the cities you reside in ever grow wearisome, and your travels may find you above the mighty Mackinac, or somewhere on 41, northbound from Wisconsin, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you. So that was an interesting song because the lyrics don't rhyme, which, if you're not a songwriter, you think, well, that's odd. But sometimes it's fun and kind of challenging to write stuff that's more like poetry and set it to music. And it makes sense in the context of the song. Some of the other songs include, there's a song for Lake Superior, aptly titled Superior's Song. I always introduce it when I play it live by saying, here's a song about Lake Superior that's not the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. As great of a song as that is. And I do love playing that one too. It's a lot of fun. Then there's a song for Lake Michigan. There's a really interesting piece that's spoken word, actually. So there's a passage in one of John Volker's fishing books, and I think it actually appears a couple times in his writings, and it came to be known as Testament of a Fisherman. It goes, I fish because I love to, because I love the environs where trout are found, which are invariably beautiful, and hate the environs where crowds of people are found, which are invariably ugly. And it goes on, and it's kind of him just listing all the reasons he fishes. And it's, I don't know if he considered himself a poet, but it's very poetic. And so I wanted to take that and set it to music. I had this little acoustic guitar instrumental piece I came up with, and initially there's actually some old footage of him. He had filmed these like fishing specials. I think it's called like Thornapple Angling Classics, and there's footage of him reading this or reciting it, for this show he did years and years and years ago. It must have been like the mid 1980s or something. But I couldn't track down the copyright holder for that audio. Obviously the words belong to John Volker and his estate now. So after some more searching, I actually was able to get in contact with his daughter, and get permission to use that passage, for a music project. And so I got the permission. She was really nice. I hope that I did it justice, but I ended up taking my instrumental and then, just recording the spoken word, the piece myself, and just reading it and putting it over the top of that. So I called it Trout Magic, and it's different than anything else I've ever done because, I don't sing. It's just reading that passage with music. But that was If You Seek a Pleasant Peninsula. And that one, the artwork, I was really, well, I like to do my own artwork. I'm not an artist, but I guess I have a specific idea in mind when I make my music, and kind of an idea of how I want the visuals to be conveyed. And so for the first one of Iron Men, I kind of had all these UP artifacts, and I kind of all just lined them up on a chair I had at home that looked like it kind of fit that vibe, and took a picture of it. And for Pleasant Peninsula, I actually had some pictures from, I think it was the first time that I visited Kitchitikipi, the big spring. And I had some pictures, and if you've been there, the bottom is this beautiful, almost an emerald green, somewhere between emerald green and like an aqua. And depending on the seasons and the time of day and the light conditions, it sort of changes. But the cover art was actually the bottom of that spring, which is super cool. So this is summer 2018. I'm playing a bunch of live shows, just again, just like the back room of a bar or restaurant. Some different summer events happening around the UP. 4th of July things, stuff like that. And it gets to be the fall, and I have this collection of rock songs that I wanted to record. And, rock guitar and guitar solos and being able to shred and finger tap. And I still love metal and rock, and I listen to it a lot still. But I had written some stuff that was very different from my UP themed, kind of folksy, indie acoustic folk sound. I had written some stuff that was hard rock, that was had heavy guitars and I put bass. I played bass on it as well when I recorded this, and my friend whose studio I recorded in, Rich, he played drums for me. Actually, one of the songs, my brother played some acoustic guitar, and then my cousin Jack, who fronts his own band Jazzno, they're based in Marquette. They're amazing. Check them out. He's actually drummed for me a couple different times over the years, but he recorded some drums for me too. And so I put together this 4-song project called Boreal, and very, very much hard rock, kind of dark imagery. You know, I don't know. Every genre of music has its own little cliches and tropes, and so I try my best to avoid those when I write. Um, you can listen to it and decide for yourself, but you know, some darker themes, death, dealing with loss, grief, um, you know, things like depression, um, some spiritual stuff. I grew up in the church, and so lingering questions about that sort of stuff, kind of all put together. As far as the music, again, we did it as a full rock band. So I did the guitars, bass, and then vocals, and then of course I had some help with the drums, and then some of the other. There's a song, the title track actually, Boreal, has some piano that my good friend Brett played for me. Um, but so this this guitar has a fun story. This has been my go-to rock and metal guitar since I was 16. So I bought this thing, um, and I had it for like 5 years, and I played in a couple different bands with it, like right after high school. Um, I played in a kind of a rock cover band with some high school buddies our freshman year of college. Um, and none of us sang really. Like a couple of us did. I didn't. A couple of the other guys did, and so they would sing like a few of the songs, but mostly we were playing like Stairway to Heaven as like an instrumental. Um, and and then after that, I played in a band with some guys I knew from my church at the time. We called ourselves Light After Midnight, and we were very much like influenced by, you know, Christian hard rock, like Skillet, Thousand Foot Crutch, especially. And so I played this guitar a lot. And then it was 2013. I wasn't really playing in bands anymore. I was pretty busy, um, getting ready to do my senior year of college, figuring out what the heck I was going to do after graduation. And I actually sold this thing. I sold it to a guy on Craigslist. So then, um, 4 years later, um, we're back in the UP, and I'm walking around. So we're in Escanaba, and I go into Jim's Music in Escanaba, the music store there, and just kind of exploring around, looking at stuff. And I had kind of started getting back into guitar because well, for one, we weren't in a little apartment anymore, and I could actually play loud. Um, but I was also working a full time job and could like buy a guitar now. So I'm looking at the used guitars, and I see this thing hanging there. And I thought, hey, that looks like the one I used to have. So I started checking it out, and I'm like, oh, yep, right here. There's a little mark. Yep, the back here. There's I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's kind of a dark spot from the neck resting against the black felt inside the case. And then I looked the model number and stuff, and I was like, okay, this is my guitar. Here it is. So I actually bought it back, and long story short, I recorded Boreal with this. Um, and the songs on that album, if you're a guitar player, I had this thing tuned down to drop C and drop B even for one song. Very intense, heavy metal, guitar tuning. Very aggressive sound. 2 of the 4 songs have guitar solos. Um, yeah, that was a lot of fun. I did some more aggressive vocals where I got to push my voice a little bit, or a lot bit. But that was Boreal. So then 2019, I was pretty busy. We had our first daughter, and we bought a house and all this stuff. And I still found some time for music. I actually wrote and recorded a song for our daughter, Isla. And I think the easy way would have been to do like a nice, acoustic guitar, piano, lullaby, right? Like a cute little song for this baby girl. But I said, no, I'm going to write a rock ballad. And so I did. I did a rock ballad. And, all this stuff I'll put in the video description, but that was a lot of fun. There's this really pretty piano intro, and then the whole guitar, bass, and drums come in, and it's heavy, and it's got a guitar solo, a really like amazing shredded guitar solo from my friend Randy in Manistee, who I had a chance to play in a band with for several years. He's a phenomenal guitarist. And that was what I did in 2019. So kind of, again, hard rock kind of started off with all these like UP folk songs, and then kind of, getting out all these other music ideas I had over time. But again, like, not veering too far away from my roots, because still definitely influenced by the Upper Peninsula. Like the cover art, I did cover art just for one song, for Isla, and the picture I used is, it's of sunset looking off the west side of the Keweenaw Peninsula, and there's this little point of light out on the water, and it was actually an oarboat, and I don't know how many miles away the thing was, but I'm sure it was an oarboat coming out of Duluth or wherever, and it made for a really cool and cool imagery for the song. After that was 2020, the COVID year. I didn't really play live much because no one was, but I still had music that I wanted to do, and so kind of the big one that I had two I was kind of working on simultaneously, two albums, and then they actually I released them both then in early 2021. But the first one was called Indian Paintbrush, and kind of going back to a stripped down acoustic indie folk sound, but again dealing with stuff other than like these UP folk songs I had written. The songs on that album deal a lot with kind of becoming an adult and figuring out the world and reevaluating things you believe or brought up with. The title track, Indian Paintbrush, I think explains it pretty well. And there's a song actually on there that I wrote for my wife Sarah for our 5-year anniversary. And that one, I actually submitted the lyrics to American Songwriter. And this gets down a rabbit hole, but if you're a songwriter, don't waste a lot of money submitting songs to places, because it's kind of a scam. But I placed 4th in this lyric contest, and so I got some lyrics published in American Songwriter. But other than that, there's a song that uses some kind of creepy delay and echo effects. That's the song's kind of inspired by the Paulding Light, and kind of uses that as a metaphor. It's called Old US 45. It's kind of a neat song. Kind of did like some really quiet whispered vocals almost on it. But that's Indian Paintbrush. Kind of concurrently with that, I had been working with my buddy Rich again in his home studio, and then kind of did like the first half with him and the second half just at home after Indian Paintbrush was the first thing I recorded all on my own, 100% on my own, played everything, sang everything, did everything in my basement, like in the fall of 2020. And so after that, it's not like amazing, but I was happy with it. I thought, hey, this is pretty good for me. But I knew I could record my own stuff after that, especially, more stripped down, acoustic, simpler stuff. And so after that came out in January 2021, that spring I put out my next project, which returned to, in a lot of ways, the UP themes. So I had a whole bunch of songs that didn't really seem to fit in with the Of Iron and Men, like history stuff. They also didn't really seem to fit with the Pleasant Peninsula, like really melodic, flowy, acoustic guitar songs about like Great Lakes and forests and things. But they were kind of songs about my childhood and growing up and like nostalgic stuff. Heavily influenced by Frontier Ruckus. They're a Detroit based kind of folk rock band and kind of famous for their lyrics dealing with very, very specific sense of place in Michigan. They, name drop all kinds of different places around the state, especially around Metro Detroit. But also famous for kind of their nostalgic lyrics and, painting pictures of childhood and, looking back on that as an adult and that sort of thing. And so there was a big theme of that. And this album came to be called Summer '97, and that's the title track. But yeah, it's kind of just a bunch of snapshots from different points in my life. Some from very early on, some from, again, being an adult, looking back on my childhood and these really special places and people and things. But I think even though it's pretty specific to the UP and to me, I think it's relatable too. I think a lot of the songs are, there's themes that could be true, in a lot of different parts of the country, or Canada, or Finland. There's a lot of references to the sauna and to fishing and to snow and mosquitoes. So, I don't know. There actually is a song with a Finnish title, and I knew I wanted it to have a Finnish title because it kind of was about my great grandparents' camp, which they were both. I think they were both 100% Finnish. And so I knew I wanted to call it like my grandfather's cabin, but in Finnish. And so I actually enlisted the help of a kind of Finnish American culture group I'm in on Facebook to help me translate. I initially was calling it Iso Asani Hutti, which translates to my grandfather's cabin, but apparently it means like a cabin on like a cruise ship or like the cabin of a plane. So the group I'm in helped me translate it to Iso Asani Muki, which is more like a camp, a cottage, a summer cottage. And that one actually is cool because I was able to get in contact with this guy, this legend. Oops, wrong side. This legend behind me here, Mr. Elmer Aho. And this would have been about a year before he passed away. But I got in touch with him on the phone. I had kind of been emailing with his son. I said, hey, I have this song, and I'm recording an album, and I'm a big fan of Elmer's. I listen to his show. He did the American Country Gold, classic country radio show for many, many years up here on Saturday nights. And actually, that's kind of what inspired Saturday Sauna Night a little bit is, hanging out at camp, Elmer Aho on the radio, taking a sauna. Doesn't get better than that. Long story short, I got in touch with him on the phone, and he so kindly recorded just over the phone. I didn't need crisp audio quality for this, but I wanted him to just record a little intro to the song. Like like when he is introducing songs on his radio show, he would always say, this next song is called such and such, and he might give a little history about the artist or something. So, and it's very simple. He just says, this next song is called Isu Asani Mukki, or My Grandfather's Cabin. So kind of just says it in Finnish, and then gives the English translation. But that was special to me to have that on there. But probably my favorite song on Summer '97 is the last song, and it's called Blue Moon and Superman. And it's just it uses the metaphor of all these different colors of ice cream kind of melting together in a bowl as like all of these childhood memories kind of blending together, and sometimes it's hard to parse out, what year this happened or this, but um, very, very nostalgic, very, um, lots of specific references to um, things that were happening in the late 90s and early 2000s, um, and also places around the UP. So that song, there's references to, UP folklore, like the Big Boy Graveyard. If you don't know what that is, Google it. I think Bugsy Sailor wrote an article about it for his website years ago. But there's also references to like Nintendo 64 and PlayStation, and um, riding bikes around Ishpeming with friends, and like standing out in the parking lot of Ralph's Deli counting change, seeing if we had $1 to go in and buy a candy bar. Um, Again, specific to me, specific to the places I grew up with, but hopefully relatable to people all over. So after that, and that one I haven't actually taken the time or money to order CDs. I'd like to get them someday. I still like to have physical albums, but it is available on Spotify and YouTube and all those places. Of course, if you're gonna check my stuff out, I'd love if you'd go to my Bandcamp page and listen there. You can stream everything, I think 3 times before it asks you to buy it. So anyway, that was summer '97, and then after that, um, I had 2 more songs that I did, not and just kind of individual songs, um, both spring of 2022. And so I had a song called Borealis that I did, which was kind of like a follow up to my EP Boreal, kind of expanding on those themes. Some there's some I tried to kind of use some interesting um, imagery of like the Northern Lights, but kind of as like a metaphor for, I guess, again, kind of going back to my upbringing in the evangelical church, um, you know, a metaphor for what I thought, I guess, life would be like, um, as part of that culture, and then what it actually was like. Um, but it's very heavy Metallica influence on that one, actually. Um, there's kind of an interesting blend of 12-string acoustic guitar and then really heavy drop C electric guitar. There's kind of a neat guitar solo, and then Jack from Jasno did the drums, and they're just massive. Like, the drum tone on that song, just it kicks ass. It's great. Then after that, I had one more. I had one more song I had to do, and we had our second daughter, and a while before this, and I knew, just like her sister, I wanted to write her a song, and I wanted it to be a rock ballad, like a heavy lullaby, and so that one actually became, yeah, kind of a rock ballad, but a little more upbeat, and kind of a happy, bright sounding rock song. And so that's called Vera, and it's got this. I love the cover art I used for it is this picture of um, the Porcupine Mountains, and well, it's actually in the woods, not of the mountains themselves, but we had taken a little trip there, and everything was super, super green. This was like late spring, very early summer, kind of like mid-May, late May, and everything was so vibrant green, and it just became this really cool picture I used. That's Vera. Again, heavy rock song. My friend Rich played the drums. Very, very, just like Borealis, very, very aggressive drum tone. It's got a guitar solo. It's got some interesting. It's got actually both of those rock ballads I did have interesting bridges where they take like a kind of like a Sunday school song we used to sing, to them when they were little, and kind of throws it in there and like shakes up the style and then comes back to the rock at the end. So I'm proud of that stuff. I don't, they don't get a lot of streams. I sure as hell don't make money off of it. But if you're going to do music or anything creative, you do it because you like it. And I like it. I'm happy with it. You know, I can sit and critique the production quality or my voice or what I did with this guitar part, or I should have added this thing here, this thing here. And, you can do that if you do music and you write songs and you play songs. You'll drive yourself crazy doing that. And so I try not to worry too much. But yeah, you can listen to all that stuff under this cold sky if you want to look me up on Spotify or other places. But I'll put links to my Bandcamp in the description below. And so that's my music. That's Under This Cold Sky. And yeah, again, a creative outlet. Something I did because I kind of had all these thoughts that I had to get out, and writing them into a song. And I like to play guitar. It was a good fit. From my UP themed stuff, which is a lot of fun, and people seem to like when I play it live, and they're like, "Hey, I know that place he just mentioned. He just used the word Ishpeming in a song." I actually have a song called "The Sceny Stretch at Midnight in a Blizzard," and it's kind of like this. It almost has like a southern rock bluesy sound to it. But yeah, it's literally a song about driving across the sceny stretch late at night during bad weather. So that's my music, and I hope you'll check it out. And if you don't, I'm not sure why you are still listening to the podcast at this point in the episode, but hey. And so with that, I guess I should talk a little bit about the podcast. So hopefully you notice the video quality is better. I feel bad because so I started this thing with my brother Kyle back in September, and I said, it was kind of spur of the moment. It was like, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And he said, "Sure." I was like, "I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we're going to do it." And video was kind of an afterthought. And I went to Walmart, literally, like the day we recorded our first episode. I stopped at Walmart and I bought this little webcam. And it's like kind of cool, but the video is really bad. And so last week, I had the pleasure of doing this panel for video creators. It was called the Outdoor Adventure Filmmakers Panel. I talked about this in the previous episode too. And so I got to do that, and I learned so much. Listening to some of these UP-based creators who I've been following their stuff for years now. Hates Wanderings and Dark Waters Fly Shop, and then of course Kristen with Discovering and with her own documentary work. And I decided it is time to step up my camera game a little bit. So this episode is the first one that I'm actually using my Samsung Galaxy S22 as a webcam. And so there's a little trick you can do. I feel bad because my wife brought this up and said, "Hey, like, podcast is great, but your video is not that clear." And I got frustrated, and I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever." I didn't want to believe that this little webcam would really suck that bad. But then I was talking with another friend who does photography professionally, has a background in graphic design, and we were kind of troubleshooting camera options, and hopefully this looks better. I think I got the sound down. So this is actually Kyle's mic, but yeah, hopefully it looks and sounds good now. So I'm very excited. In the coming weeks, there's going to be some really cool interviews that I have the pleasure to be doing, and some too that are going to kind of move away from the whole hunting fishing thing, which I feel like pretty much all fall. After we started this thing in September, I feel like pretty much every episode I was talking about fishing. And I can talk about fishing till long past your bedtime. Trust me. But yeah, gonna have some really interesting people on who I think will have a cool perspective on you know UP based things. I don't want to say more than that, but that's Saturday Sauna Night. Thanks again for listening. I hope you'll check out some of my music under this cold sky. And if you don't, I hope you like the podcast. I hope you'll continue to listen to that. And, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube yet, that would be great. I'd like to get this thing to triple digits. And also follow us on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook because we're there. And, I like memes. And sometimes I like to be funny, or try at least. So give us a follow. When I say us, I mean me. So yeah, thanks for listening to Saturday Sauna Night. I'm Steve, and we'll see you again soon.